All right, so I just started recording, so feel free to tell us all about Codex.
Okay, so let me know if you have any problems hearing me. I don't have my external mic and speakers, so I'm just using the system mic.
No, you're coming through loud and clear. And
okay, great.
If anybody has any questions, speak up so that he can hear you.
Yes, I did have difficulty hearing people's names, so if they could come to the computer to ask questions.
Okay.
That would be...
Right.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and good morning, Andy, I guess. And thanks, Scott, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be presenting. I wish I could be there in person. As we said earlier, I'm in Japan right now, so traveling is a little bit difficult. But I am moving back to Canada in August, so traveling will be a little bit easier then. So hopefully I can get down there sometime, or maybe we can meet at some other place, conference maybe. So before I get into Codex, I thought I'd talk about a little story first. So please humor me. So Codex Systems is based in Toronto, and just outside of Toronto there's a large Mennonite community. And the Mennonites are like the Amish. They live very simple lives, no cars, no electricity. They're good farmers and carpenters, and they sell their products usually to visitors at large farmers markets, like fresh produce or baked goods, sausages, also craft products like wooden furniture and quilts. I'm sure some of you have Amish in your communities as well. So this story is about a Mennonite named Jacob and his wife Rachel. Jacob is a carpenter, and he makes chairs. He makes some very nice chairs, actually. And he does everything himself. He selects the wood, he cuts it, he turns it, he carves it, he assembles it, and then he stains it. And it takes him about 2 days to make one chair. And when he's done, he starts all over again. And every weekend, he takes his chairs down to his little stall at the farmer's market, and he sells his chairs to visitors there. And he's really proud of his chairs. And he always sells out very quickly. Now, one day Jacob's wife Rachel discovers that she's pregnant, and the couple is overjoyed. But there's only one problem. Their house is very small. In fact, it's much too small even for the two of them, let alone for a family of 3. So they'll need to build a larger house. But when Rachel checks their savings, she discovers that they don't have enough money to build a new house. "You'll just have to sell more chairs," she says to Jacob. "How?" he asks. "I'm already working very hard." "Well, work harder," she replies. So
Adam, we lost you. Can you hear me?
Now at the end of the month, Rachel and Jacob do the books, and they discover that although he sold 4 times as many chairs as usual, he had to reduce the price because of their poor quality, eliminating most of his profit. Now at that very moment, there's a knock at the door, and it's their neighbor Joseph, who's a tool maker. "Why are you so down?" he asks Jacob. Jacob explains his predicament, and Joseph smiles. "Well, what you need are some better tools," he says, reaching into his cart. "This saw blade is very thin, so you can cut wood much faster. And this lathe is wind-powered, so you can turn wood 10 times as fast." And by the end of their conversation, Jacob has invested a good chunk of his savings into an entire set of tools. And he goes to bed that night feeling optimistic. Now the next day, Jacob uses his new tools, and he notices his productivity has indeed increased. What's more, the quality of his chairs remains high. So at the end of the month, Jacob and Rachel do the books and discover that he's sold 4 times as many chairs as usual at their full price. The resulting profit is significant. But they also need to pay back the money they used from their savings. And at the current rate, they still won't be able to save enough money to build a new house within 9 months. Now at that very moment, there's a knock at the door. and 5 young carpenters from the village come looking for work. "You're hired," says Jacob immediately. "Come to my workshop first thing tomorrow morning." If it works for barn raising, it'll work for chairs, he thinks. Now Jacob usually makes 5 different types of chairs, so he decides that the best way to divide the work is to have each carpenter make 1 type of chair. And to avoid having to buy a new set of tools for each of them, he devises a tool sharing schedule. And then Jacob then becomes the manager and supervisor. At the end of the month, Rachel and Jacob do the books and discover, not surprisingly, that he sold 5 times as many chairs as last month. But after they pay the 5 carpenters their salary, very little profit remains. And at the current rate, they still won't be able to save enough money to build a new house before the baby arrives. Well, Jacob waits for a knock at the door, but there's only silence. So the next day, Jacob drags himself to his workshop, and by the time he gets there, the 5 carpenters are already hard at work. And despite his financial difficulties, Jacob takes some comfort in knowing that he's helping these 5 young men earn a living. He watches each of them working quietly away, and as he does so, he starts to notice something. He notices that Jebediah is really good at using a lathe. He can turn and carve wood really fast, but he's rather slow at sanding and staining. Ezekiel, on the other hand, is great at staining and waxing wood, but he's always slow to finish his lathe work. Why not let each person do what he does best, Jacob asks himself. Instead of each person building his own chair, let them work together to build a single chair. So Jacob stops the carpenters and explains his idea, and together they set up a simple assembly line. The first carpenter cuts the wood into rough shapes. The second carpenter does the carving and turning. The third carpenter does all the sanding. The fourth carpenter assembles the chair components. And the fifth carpenter does the staining and waxing. They can all see an immediate increase in productivity. They also start to notice things they hadn't before. Although they're making 5 different types of chairs, there are some similarities between them. First, the person cutting the wood notices the legs and arms of several chair types are very similar. By making them identical, he suggests, he can increase his productivity because he won't have to change his jigs as often. And the person doing the staining and waxing notices that the 5 different chairs use 5 different but very similar stains. By using the same stain for all chairs, he can increase his productivity because he won't have to clean his brushes as often. At the end of the month, Rachel and Jacob do the books and discover to their surprise that he sold 600 chairs without any increase in operating costs. Their profit goes through the roof. Within a few months, they have saved enough money to build a new house, which is quickly constructed with the help of their Mennonite neighbors just in time for the arrival of their new baby. Now that's not quite the end of the story. Jacob, he can't stop himself from making further improvements. He divides the labor even more and hires specialized workers who can work even faster. He divides his chairs into more components, and by doing so he can reuse more components in more types of chairs. He becomes a very successful man, but he doesn't stop there. Since he sells most of his chairs to people from Toronto, he decides to build a workshop closer to his customers, outside of the Mennonite community. By doing so, he can start using electricity and automated machinery. And when he outgrows the workshop, he builds a $50 million state-of-the-art factory with dozens and dozens of robotic machines. But Jacob still keeps his humble home in the Mennonite community and lives a simple life with his family. Now Jacob has a sister, Elizabeth, who makes quilts. And being a traditional Mennonite, she makes her quilts the old-fashioned way. She does everything herself. She cuts the cloth patches, she stitches them together. It takes her about 2 full days to make one quilt, and when she's done, she starts all over again. And at the end of the week, she takes her quilts down to the farmer's market and sells them to visitors. Now Elizabeth is somewhat in awe of Jacob because he's so successful. So one day she decides to ask him, "How can I become more successful? How can I make more quilts?" Now without thinking, Jacob just laughs and says, "Well, quilts are different than chairs. You can't make quilts the same way that I make chairs." But as Elizabeth lowers her head with regret for asking, Jacob immediately starts to question his response. Wait, he says, maybe quilts aren't different than chairs. Maybe you can make quilts the same way that you make chairs. Here's what you need to do. Invest $50 million in a robotic factory. Elizabeth's eyes glaze over. She has no idea what a robot is, and certainly doesn't have $50 million. Is to divide the labor. If not between different people, then at least into different stages. Do similar work at the same time, make components and assemble them, you'll be more efficient. Standardize. Make standard components that can be used in multiple products. Reduce redundancies and insignificant differences. Start small with these basic concepts, you'll realize immediate productivity improvements, and you'll lay the foundation for future improvements, like a $50 million robotic factory. And that is the end of the story. So in case you didn't catch on, I'm not talking about chairs and quilts, I'm talking about documents. I'm talking about technical documentation and other types of documents, contracts, proposals, marketing material. Documents are just like any other product, they're manufactured. And I don't just mean physical documents like books, I mean content. Writing is content manufacturing. Now, technical content and marketing content, they may seem very different, and in some ways they are, but you can think of all types of content produced for business purposes as being manufactured. Many types of documents are produced the old-fashioned way. One person handcrafts a unique self-contained document from start to finish. This is known as craft production. Craft production is great in certain situations. If you're creating a low volume of content and you're good at doing everything, writing, structuring, editing, layout, publishing, then craft production works well. But if the person doing the crafting isn't good at everything, then you're going to run into problems. The other problem with craft production is that it doesn't scale well. You can't increase volume or decrease costs without a corresponding decrease in quality. But this is what many people try to do. So the result is crap on a page. Yes, you can improve productivity by introducing new tools like Microsoft Word 2010, but you won't see dramatic improvements as long as you're using a craft production process. Mass production, however, is great for high-volume products. Mass production can be quite simple, like the very earliest factories, or it can be very sophisticated, like the most modern robotic factories. But the principles are the same. Divide the labor, make components and assemble them, make standard components that can be used in multiple products, reduce redundancies and insignificant differences. So many technical writers have made the move from craft production to mass production, and DITA has made that much easier. DITA really embodies the principles of mass production. The separation of content and presentation can be considered a division of labor between writers and designers. And topic-based writing enables further division of labor among content writers. Topics and maps are also a way of creating and assembling components. So the result is better content that is produced faster and cheaper than before. But what about non-technical writers? What about business document authors, sales, marketing? How can they produce better content faster and cheaper than before? The answer, of course, is to move from craft production to mass production. But how? And can DITA help? Some people might say no, because DITA was made for technical documentation, not business documents. But the basic principles of DITA are applicable to any type of content, just as the basic principles of mass production are applicable to any product. The key is to start simple. So other people might say no because DITA is expensive to implement and DITA authoring is too complex for non-technical authors. Well, those people are right. But this is why we developed Codex. So Codex is a simple editor that lets non-technical authors create and edit very basic DITA topics and maps. In fact, it's so simple, it's best not to think of it as a DITA editor or you'll be disappointed. Instead, think of Codex as a rich text editor that uses the DITA file format. So let's take a look. Okay, this is Codex. The first thing you see is a blank topic. So I'll just create a simple topic. The first line is automatically formatted as the title. To start a list, I can just type the number 1. Oops. And when I press enter, it's automatically formatted as a list, just as in most word processors or rich text editors. If I press enter twice, the list is finished. So to create a second line within a list, I can just press Shift Enter. And to create a sublist, I can just press Tab. Oops. So I can use Shift Tab to outdent or Tab to indent to create a sublist. There's also a toolbox on the right that has various list and paragraph formats. So by clicking on this, I can change this list to a bullet or to number. There's also character formats. Most of them are style-based, bold, italic, underline. There's a few semantic tags, UI control, and win title. So I'll just apply a few character tags. And something we just added recently is code block. And another addition is note. And that's pretty much it for Codex, the topic editor. There's standard editor functions like undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, find and replace. But this is pretty much it. So I'm just going to save the topic. And we can take a quick look. At the DITA file. So this is the DITA file that it's saved. So Codex also lets you create and edit simple maps. So I'll just create a simple map. And the way this works is you use your file browser, select your topic files, or DITA maps, and drag them into the map editor. Once they're in the map editor, then you can drag and drop them to create your hierarchy. I can move them into place, create subsections, There's a few additional tools. Most of the editing functions you can do with drag and drop, but there's also buttons for creating child or sibling topics, moving topics up and down. And if you have a list of glossary items or a command, your topics for review purposes, there's no way to control the output. So Codex is strictly an editor. There's no content management or publishing features included. And I think I lost my presentation. Okay. Just jump back. Now there are other simple DITA editors available, so it's worthwhile pointing out a few differences between Codex and those. So first, Codex is an editor. It's not a complete solution, so there's no content management, there's no publishing feature. It's strictly an editor. Also, Codex is a standalone desktop application. It's not tied to Microsoft Word. It's not a web application that requires a server. And it's not a hosted solution. So these differences are intended to minimize the barriers to DITA adoption, so to make it really, really easy for anyone, a business document author, to download Codex and just start using it. They can just install it on their desktop and start using it without having to set up a server or anything like that. So let's take a look at some of the scenarios in which Codex may be of value. So this is Rick. Rick is the owner of an IT services company. Okay. And he creates a lot of contracts. And during negotiations with his clients, he needs to modify his contracts in fairly standard ways. So for example, he usually starts with statements that favor his company. And the client may request that this statement be modified and that statement be modified. So Rick will swap the statements with another that is still in his favor but less so. And the client may yet again request a change, in which case Rick can swap the statement for another. And this continues back and forth until Rick and his client agree on the contract. Now Rick currently does all of this in Microsoft Word. He'll start with one of his older contracts, then he'll copy and paste content from other contracts as necessary. And during negotiations, he'll copy and paste more content from other contracts or write new content from scratch. But his business is really growing, and he can't keep up with the volume of contracts that he needs to produce. So by using Codex, Rick can write his content in topic files and assemble those topics into maps much faster than copying and pasting content from Word documents. The same topics can be used again and again in multiple documents, and using a third-party publishing tool, he can publish his contracts to Microsoft Word format to provide to his client. So his requirements for formatting topics are very simple. A contract contains headings and paragraphs, and that's it. There's no lists, there's no bold, there's no structure. It's just headings and paragraphs. Now for some other types of business documents, Rick may need some more topic structuring and formatting, like ordered lists, numbered lists, bold, italic, underline, maybe a few semantic tags. But these requirements are still much, much simpler than full-blown DITA. And he has no need for concept, task, or reference topics, or any other specialized topics. So in this case, Rick wants to be faster at producing contracts. But this scenario could just as easily be about Rick wanting to increase the quality of his contracts or reduce the cost of producing the contracts. So, which is why I call it better, faster, cheaper. And this is the basic scenario that Codex was designed for the business document author to produce their documents better, faster, and cheaper. Here's another scenario. This is Jane. Jane is a technical writer at a software company. She writes product documentation using a popular DITA editor and publishes it to an Eclipse help system. Jane's writing process starts by gathering information from subject matter experts, and although she interviews a few subject matter experts in person, most of them send her information via email or a Word document, or by pointing her to a page on the company's internal wiki. And much of that information is written well enough that all Jane has to do is copy and paste the content into her DITA editor and apply the appropriate tags. And with each release, the subject matter experts suggest changes to the existing documentation. Usually they do this by copying content from the Eclipse help system, pasting it into a Word or email, editing it, and then sending it to Jane. Jane then makes the same edits to the documentation source files in her DITA editor. Now Jane considers herself lucky because she gets all of this content for free. That is, she doesn't have to write it. What she may not think about is how much time it costs her to actually get that content into the documentation. It's like a free offer. You get this product for free, you just have to pay for the shipping and handling. In this case, Jane is doing the handling herself and paying for it with her time. But this is somewhat of a hidden cost that is often overlooked. So by using Codex, subject matter experts can author content directly in DITA format. Jane can either review the files and check them into her source repository, or she can let the subject matter experts do all the check-ins themselves. In either case, there's no need for Jane to copy and paste content or duplicate edits made by subject matter experts. So the shipping and handling has been reduced or eliminated. And finally, there's a third scenario. This is Robert. He's a technical writer too. His organization uses a variety of systems for authoring and publishing information, both internal and customer-facing, mostly as HTML or PDFs. White papers are authored by technical writers and marketing staff in Microsoft Word, managed using CVS, and published to PDF format using Adobe Acrobat. Release notes are authored by technical writers and support analysts using a Lotus Notes database with a form-based front end, and then published to HTML. Product documentation is authored by technical writers using a full-featured DITA editor managed in a component content management system and published to HTML and PDF using the DITA Open Toolkit. And best practices are authored by technical writers and subject matter experts using a wiki. So although Robert is a technical writer, he doesn't actually write any content. He spends all of his time administering all of these systems, upgrading software, updating templates, and providing support. The only content Robert writes is the internal process documentation for using all of these systems. So for an organization that already is already using DITA in some capacity, Codex can help them leverage their investment in DITA infrastructure and reduce or eliminate redundant authoring and publishing systems by enabling more types of people to author more types of content in DITA, even if that content doesn't require structure, reuse, single sourcing, or any of the other benefits normally associated with DITA. So in this scenario, white papers, release notes, and best practices could be authored with Codex directly in DITA format. So I call this scenario system non-proliferation, because all of these authoring and publishing systems are a little bit like nuclear weapons. If you're not careful, you can build a great deal of them, even though they're costly and redundant, and sooner or later you have to deal with them. Okay, so the first version of Codex was released in April with a minimal feature set. But we've released 2 updates already, releasing updates about once every month or 2 with additional features. So images and tables are coming next, followed by integration with content management systems. A web application version of Codex is also in the works. There are also a number of DITA features that we can see being useful, including many inline elements, but also reuse-related features like conrefs, variables, and conditional processing. And a good editor isn't complete without a spell checker. Finally, for organizations that don't already have a DITA publishing solution in place, the choices are a bit limited. So currently there isn't a good solution that's both inexpensive and easy to customize. So this is another feature that we're considering adding to Codex. Okay, so I just want to leave you with one final thought, and that is to look for the opportunities. So look for the Ricks who want to produce non-technical content better, faster, and cheaper. Look for the Janes who want to eliminate shipping and handling. And look for the Roberts who want to reduce system administration. And that concludes my presentation. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, please step up to the computer or the microphone.
Questions? Comments? What do you think?
Do you support specializations?
Do you support specializations?
No, we do. Or do you mean inline elements
No.
or topic types?
The topic type.
No, it does. Codex does not support topic type, so it's strictly the generic topic type.
Okay.
Can you edit attributes on tags?
Currently, no. So we may add support for certain attributes, but it will be limited. We'll be very selective about what we add. Currently, the map editor, it maintains all unsupported tags and attributes. So you can edit your map in Codex and you won't lose any data. But the topic editor, you won't be able to open a file that contains unsupported tags or attributes currently.
How can you indicate it's a referenced or a concept topic or the type of topic?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sorry, what?
In other words, if you wanted to do a reference topic, how do you signal?
It only does topics.
It only does
Generic.
Just generic topics.
Oh, generic.
Right.
On that roadmap, when you're talking about the new features, is the roadmap over 18 months, 12 months?
What's the time frame of your roadmap that you're talking about these additional features?
Is he there?
He'll be back.
He's answering. We can't hear him. Can you see the?
So maybe I'll ask you guys a question. If you could comment on your experience with the Ricks and the Roberts and the Janes. Do you see the value of non-technical authors being able to author simple DITA content?
Yeah. Yes, I think that if we had it needs to connect to a content management system.
Yeah, it needs to connect to the content management system, though.
That's what I was asking.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's we just so you know, there have been a couple of chunks where you've fallen. The audio is gone for 30 seconds or so. I think we just had one of those. So one of the questions was, what's the time frame of your roadmap for some of those features, like CMS?
So sure, images and tables, that's in the next couple of months. The content management integration, that's going to be a couple of months after that, and the web application a few more months after that. So all of those things is probably like 6 months to a year time frame.
What about the tablet application?
You don't give up on that. We're thinking about that.
It would be awesome.
I think so too.
Who else here wants
To be
a
honest.
DITA editor on their tablet?
That'd be cool.
Take it out, wherever you are. You can take notes, you can jot things down, then you can sync it to your main system somewhere. But I don't know. I think that great.
Adam, I have a
Yes.
question, if I may. This is Andy.
Hi, Andy.
Hi. For the benefit of the audience, Adam and I have spoken about this before, but I wanted to raise this again. I think the paring down and simplification of DITA for non-DITA specialists is laudable and definitely has value. I wanted to ask you, what determines which DITA features you do provide? How do you prioritize? What's the thinking behind the features that you do offer?
Well, it is difficult. We've tried to take some scenarios like the Ricks. We want to produce the contract as like the bottom line. That's our starting point. And that's the simplest one, and kind of build it from there. Also, it's a case of the squeaky wheel getting the oil. So if someone's expressing interest in Codex and they want images, well, we've got images and tables and we've got a bunch of things on our list. We'll probably bump up the images and get that in sooner.
Okay, so is it kind of ease of development driven, or does it come from some form of market research among non-DITA
I would say
non-DITA
it comes more from the market than from the ease of development. There's partly it does come from the ease of development, but more so from the market.
Okay.
So we're trying to develop an editor that can produce business documents and provide the kind of the reuse features of DITA. So there's a lot of reuse features that we'd like to get in there. But the high level of structure in different topic types, that's beyond what Codex is intended to do.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
I have a question. When you're looking at Rick with the legal documents that he thought were just headers and paragraphs, does that interface get simplified when he's saying, okay, my document type is legal documents and I don't only want headers and paragraphs, or does he still see the same interface?
Currently, there's no automatic reduction of the interface as you're suggesting. What we want to do is we want to have a way to customize the UI. So it probably wouldn't be automatic like you're suggesting based on the type of content or type of topic file that you have. But the user could customize the UI to hide the stuff that they don't want to see. And this is going to become more important as we add more support, especially for more DITA inline tags. We'll likely add a lot of inline tags support because that's fairly easy to do. But once we start doing that, then the interface is going to get very, very full. And we want a way for people to be able to hide the tags they don't want to use. So, good question.
How much does it cost?
Right now, we only have one licensing scheme in place, and that's an annual license of $99 US per year. So it's an annual license. So we're looking at other options like volume discounts or site license as well.
It seems like from your description of your persona that you're envisioning these people to be working relatively independently. Do you foresee that in the future, when you have richer functions, that people could be working in a larger context, that there would be other people that they were sharing? Is Rick doing reuse only with his own stuff, or is he sharing with other people?
So Codex is strictly an editor. That would probably be more on the content management side. But there's nothing standing in the way of Rick sharing his topic files with someone else and being able to reuse topic files among a group of writers.
Well, he could.
The most simplest.
On DITA and he doesn't, right? Or how would that work?
Oh, they both writers would have to be using Codex or using DITA to be able to share content.
So you don't see what I assumed that I think is maybe an incorrect assumption was that there is a path where as you get more features into the product that you will be more and more able to have people actually import your stuff into a system where it can be massaged and made even more structured. Am I wrong about that?
Okay, I see what you're saying. You mean with other DITA editors, like a full featured DITA editor?
Yeah.
And yes, that is the direction we're going with Codex. We want to make Codex authored files. Someone can take them into another DITA editor, work with them there, take them back to Codex. So subject matter experts could have Codex, technical writers could have a full featured DITA editor, and the content could go back and forth between them. Currently, because Codex has a very limited set of features, that's difficult. You have to kind of restrict yourself in the DITA editor to features that are supported by DITA. But going forward, we want to be able to open topic files in Codex that contain unsupported features, and you'll still be able to open the file and edit it.
Are you going after the same market or a different one than RoboHelp and Flare and all of those kind of tools that really appeal to smaller businesses?
I'm not familiar with that tool. What is that? Global Help?
RoboHelp.
Oh, RoboHelp. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, it's kind of a tricky question because there's a lot of different types of applications that you could say Codex is competing with or going up against. You could say the help authoring systems, but a business document author is probably not going to consider a help authoring system, although they could use that. Microsoft Word is another one. A business author, document author would be using Word, so Word is kind of another quasi-competitor. A rich text editor, a full-feature DITA editor. And so there's like a whole range of different types of authoring systems that Codex could potentially replace or displace.
It seems to me that a couple of years ago in this group we were talking about content reuse for everything. My company at the time was thinking, oh, we'll bring all these marketing documents in and we'll have everything but it's so impractical to do that. And I liked your suggestion of product documentation being fully DITA and other documents not. It seems like a logical development to me as DITA becomes more mature in the marketplace.
That's a very good point, and I sort of share your opinion about reuse. I think reuse is talked about a lot, and people try to reuse, and it doesn't always make sense, or it can be costly to try to reuse. So sometimes it's best not to reuse or not try to, especially when trying to do it across a larger group of people or across departments. You kind of have these silos of people, and it can be really difficult to get them to share content. So I don't try to push the reuse too much. I try to keep it very simple, and even just reuse for a single person to be able to reuse their content more efficiently between different documents is kind of a big win. I try not to push the, your whole entire company can reuse everything together in this utopian environment, because it gets more and more difficult. The more reuse you want to do, the more difficult it gets. So.
Just looking out in the next, beyond just the immediate roadmap, one thing that often happens with some of these products, just in software in general, is that they just continue to gain in complexity. And so is your goal to keep this as a simple editor, or is it to enter the market as a simple editor and then build on additional complexity?
No, we do really want to keep it just a simple editor. I don't want to add publishing features either, actually. I'd prefer not to do that. The publishing is just a bit of a weak point, I think, in the DITA world, that for a business author who wants to author in DITA and publish something and be able to control what the output looks like, I think it's really difficult with the existing publishing systems. But in terms of DITA support in Codex, we'd really like to keep that simple as well. We don't want to grow Codex to be a humongous application like a Microsoft Word that has everything for everybody. So we will add some features to it, but we're going to be very selective about what we add, and we're going to try to make it so that customers can either they can customize what they see, or what we may do is we may productize Codex into different products so that there's no one all-encompassing product that has every feature, but there's a product for business users that just has what they need, and they don't have to see a lot of other stuff.
And who are your customers today? Not necessarily names, but just types of customers. Are they enterprise customers or small, medium business?
A mix of small and big. So right now we're kind of working, we just released in April, so it's a fairly new product. We're working with a couple of reference customers right now. I'll give you a couple examples. One is actually Rick. Rick is based on one of the customers we're dealing with. He's a IT services company, and he produces a lot of contracts. And he's interested in Codex for that reason. He's actually a bit of an unusual guy because he didn't know about DITA, but he researched publishing systems, and he came to learn about DITA, and that's how he came to Codex. So he thinks DITA is the way to go, but the existing DITA editors are too complex for him, so he is really excited about Codex and being able to use that for his contracts and other business documents too. Also for procedure documents that they produce right now, they use Microsoft Word. Another customer is a very large company, and they're looking at Codex for the subject matter experts scenario. So the Jane scenario. They have subject matter experts using, I think they're using a couple of different types of DITA editors like Oxygen and XMetal, but they want to have something simpler for the subject matter experts. And I think they want to spread it a bit more widely as well. So those are two good examples. The third scenario that I listed, that's something that may not be obvious to anyone. So, but I think it's a really interesting scenario that you could author stuff in DITA, even if you don't want to reuse any content, you don't have a need for structure, but just as a way to get rid of some of those other publishing systems that you have in place. So if you don't really need it to be in a wiki, but maybe for historical reasons it was set up in a wiki and it's just been kind of maintained that way. If you've already got a content management system for DITA and you got the publishing system in place, if it's just the front end that's kind of limiting you, you don't have a simple authoring environment for non-technical authors to be able to author that content that's right now in a wiki, or it's in Microsoft Word or in a database, then maybe Codex could help to eliminate those other systems by just giving Codex to those authors. Then they can start using the existing content management system and publishing system that's in place for technical documentation. So I think that's an interesting scenario. So far, I'm just trying to promote the idea, but I don't have anybody knocking on my door about that one. That's kind of a hidden one.
What do you expect your customers to be publishing in, and what output type? Would it be mostly PDF, and how would they actually do the publishing?
Well, right now we have to rely on third-party software for publishing. So again, like I said, the options are kind of limited, especially when you get to the business document author who doesn't want to, they don't want to set up the open toolkit. They don't want to do things like that. So they're kind of limited to tools like XMLMind, or even another DITA editor that has an easy way to publish DITA content, which for the business document author, we think that outputting to Microsoft Word may be one of the big output formats that they'd want to use, but also PDF. So a lot of documents are exchanged in Microsoft Word format, so that's an important output format. Although it seems like a waste to have to do that, but a lot of companies, they require documents to be exchanged in Microsoft Word format or in the open XML format.
Yeah, I can see the workflow constraints being difficult in certain situations. I mean, I really like the idea of an SME being able to just write some stuff and keeps it simple, and they can hand off their DITA files, but once those files go to somebody else who's using a more full-featured editor, they probably can't come back to the SME unless the person is very careful to not add elements or structure that isn't compatible. But I think as long as you kind of maintain those constraints, I think that could work fine. I think it'll be important to get the ability to open files that may contain content that isn't fully supported, so those can round trip. I think that'll help a lot. But I think, just as long as you understand the restrictions of being able to share that content, I think there's probably a lot of people that write content that would fit into this model very easily. They don't really need any more.
Adam, I can hear you. This is Brenda. Scott's back.
Yep, I can hear you, Chris.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I lost audio for a little bit there, but I think I caught the beginning, so I think I can answer that in a couple of ways. We do want to address the issue of bringing content from Codex into other DITA editors and taking it back into Codex and that back and forth. Currently, if a file contains unsupported features, you can't open it in Codex. So what we're going to try to do next is let Codex open content. We'll warn the user that it contains unsupported features, but they'll at least be able to open it and work with it. Another approach is that we provide a way that will let the person editing the file in another DITA editor restrict themselves to the subset of features that are supported in Codex. So that could be using a schema or a subset of DITA, so that the other DITA editor knows which elements to restrict itself to.
So there were people that were concerned about not being able to edit specialized topic types. Do your SMEs or the people who you might imagine using this sort of thing, would they be actually writing in one of these specialized models, or would they just be using topics?
Well, currently not. Currently it's strictly generic topic types. And that's kind of because we started with the business document author scenario, which is they don't really have any need for task or concept topics or reference topics. Yep. However, going forward, we may decide to support task and reference and concept topics in a limited way, so that if we can convert a concept topic, for example, into an equivalent structure in a generic topic, then Codex can read that, and then we can convert it back again. This would, of course, be seamless when you open and close the file.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering if the people here in the room that had that concern, what their workflow was in that situation, if they actually had SMEs that were writing in specialized models.
Yes.
There were a few, yes?
Yeah, hi Adam. I
Hi.
think as an implementer, the idea of constraining DITA down to a minimal set of elements is appealing. The problem that I see is that the content model is being built for the full-blown writers, and when that gets extended out to the subject matter experts, I need the ability to restrict that. Because the chances that the restrictions that you guys have chosen will actually fit, whatever it is my customers decided to do, is pretty low. So in other words, if you were to build one where the rollout, implementation, configuration people have the ability to constrain the topics, that would be very helpful.
Okay. So obviously we can't support everything in Codex, but if I think I understand what you're saying. If we, we supported a certain subset of DITA in Codex, but we allowed you in some way to do the final constraint of what someone can use in Codex and in the other DITA editors they're using. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
What I'm saying is that it's likely that a big implementation will have either use a lot of DITA or even have some specialization, and even the basic subject matter expert may be required to deliver content that conforms to that specialized content model.
Okay.
So they might not need, you know, if they're right, they might not need code block, but they really, really need the specialized description element. And,
okay.
And if I can't give that to them, if I don't have a way of supporting that, then in the subject matter expert editor, then I've got problems.
Okay, so do you mean the inline tags?
No, what I'm saying is that I think it's impossible for you to predict which tag set all these various people are going to need to support, is what I'm really saying. So, for example, I think we've lost you again, but your inline tags, there's already more stuff in there than I would want, but there's a bunch of other stuff missing that I need.
There he is. We can hear you now, Adam.
Okay, great.
Yep. So it seems like since if you're supporting topic, I mean everything fits in a topic. So in theory, you should be able to provide some method for the end user or the person setting up the installation to add some sort of a template to the editor that would say, make, you know, instead of using topic, use concept. You may still have a limited amount of elements that you can use within that, but it seems like there could be a fair amount of customization by just allowing some sort of a mapping to be done. And certain structures may not be supported, but you know, if it's based on a P or a PH or something, you know, it has the same functionality once you're in the editor. So it may just be a simple name mapping where you can provide these templates that set up the output type.
Yes, and that's, I did touch on that earlier too, that as long as we can do a mapping between the specialized topic type and what's in the editor in Codex, then that shouldn't be a problem. Of course, that's another feature, and that's probably a bit further down the road. As for other specialized topic types, I guess again, as long as there's a way we could map the structure of those topic types into what's in the editor already. Inline tags are no problem. We can always support lots of inline tags. But I think when the audio was cut out, was it Sarah? Was that you that was talking earlier about the specialized topic types?
Very good. Aye.
Yes.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay. So I can see your point. You know, a big DITA implementation, they may be using specialized topic types. If we can do the mapping, then that may be something that we're going to do so that people could create concept, task, and topic and reference topics, as long as we can map it into a structure, or even a specialized topic type, as long as we could do the mapping. But there's probably going to be a limit as to how far that can go. So I can see for a lot of implementations like that Codex wouldn't make sense. So it's, you know, for other types of implementations where the heavy structure requirements are not there. So, you know, generic topics are okay, or a simple structure in concept or task and reference.
Yeah, I can see your challenge being to keep it simple, but keep it powerful enough and keep everybody happy.
Well, that's impossible, actually. Yeah.
I think that's going to be
we're a small yeah, we're a small company too, so we have to be really selective about what we add, and we try to always have a certain scenario in mind as we're adding each feature, so that we know we're solving somebody's problem, and we're not going to be able to solve everybody's problem, but we'll gradually we'll chip away and we'll try to solve more people's problems.
Adam, your large organization that you're dealing with is thinking about doing this for subject matter experts. How are they?
Yes.
How are the subject matter experts creating their snippets now?
So from what I understand, they're using some other DITA editors, like I believe they're using Oxygen and XMetal, and possibly another one as well.
And the
so
subject matter.
I don't know all the details if they're not happy with that, or they want to spread a little bit wider, and they don't want to use those editors more widely.
And it won't work for them to do something like a wiki or something with a more popular like Word or wiki based or anything like that. That doesn't work for them.
So using Codex, you mean?
No. When the subject matter experts today are creating snippets that ultimately will be used by the technical writers, I think that's the scenario you were talking about.
Yes.
Why are they looking for another solution for their subject matter experts?
Oh, you mean the large company that I was talking about?
Right. Yeah, the large company that's working between subject matter experts and the technical writers.
So yes, right. Like I said, right now the subject matter experts are using full-featured DITA editors.
Okay.
So they want to keep authoring in DITA, but they don't want to use those full-featured DITA editors anymore.
It seems like your biggest competition is definitely something like XML9 with a constrained DTD that simplifies the experience for the writer. That seems like that would be a threat to your solution, at least right now.
Yeah, and that's another kind of competitors, the more inexpensive DITA editors that have a way to simplify the interface, like XML9 or Oxygen.
And XML9, I think, is at a price point that where people would not consider Oxygen, they might consider XML9.
Yeah.
But there's lots of room out there, don't worry.
So yeah, it's interesting. We released Codex 1.0 just a couple of months ago, and like I said, with minimal feature set, but it's really interesting hearing what people think and what they like and what they want added to it. Some people come to us with a huge list of features. They want to know when we're going to support the rest of DITA, and we're not. But other people, they understand, and they know, well, if you just have images and tables, then that's enough for us. Then we'll buy it. So it's interesting.
Any other questions or comments about just the general subject of lightweight DITA editors, or is anybody using sort of a combination of editors currently? You've got some high-powered editors and some lightweight things, and you're trying to get them to work together. No?
I have requirements for this. This is Sarah again.
Sarah always has requirements.
Okay. I have customers with requirements who are looking at opening up editing to, a couple hundred people. They have a core team of 10 that are, the tech hubs kind of group, but they're looking at a couple hundred people that they want to have contributing. So, but what I'm running into is that I don't know about this upconversion issue. I think that's going to be a roadblock. And I'm also, I mean, I like AIR because it's cross-platform. There's definitely cross-platform issues and some other things, which is a constraint around XML, not so much oxygen. So I don't know.
Well, I'd be interested in discussing it with you later, Sarah, to see what what Codex would need.
Well, and and see, that's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Yeah.
Until the content model is set and the specialization has or hasn't been done, there's no telling. And then at that point, it's too late, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So getting in early is key, you're saying.
Depends on the role of it in the system. If it's really a sort of standalone editor, like we have clients that are manufacturing companies. They don't produce a lot of documents. They're small documents, and they're no technical writers. They're all subject matter experts, and it's basically tables and some drawings and text.
Lots of
Lots of tables.
What are they going to implement? DITA?
Well, they have reuse. They have a lot of issues that are related to that could be approached with using DITA, and they're very interested in that and some other issues.
Well, I would be interested in speaking more about it offline with you, Sarah.
Yeah,
okay, that was Joan. I don't know if you could hear her.
On the other hand, companies that are it's more of a to get away from the manufacturing model, but more of a supply chain model, where what you're trying to do is really pull text into a more sophisticated system. Then the issues that Sarah's bringing up are real issues, or what Tom's talking about with using more full-featured editor, but constraining it and just exposing some features so that you can really build a template that's going to actually pull content, specific types of content. You can help pull that content forward rather than having, the sort of eddies and back and forth that happen with a lot of knowledge transfer issues today. That's, I think, a different issue. I think it's a different issue. Something that's really simple like this, I see there being problems because the content model is much more robust and it's much more complex, and you've got issues with localization as well as range and other things. And so the simplicity is one of the issues you're trying to deal with from a systems perspective.
Yeah, it does seem like getting a mapping, an element mapping of some kind working is probably very important.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be bumped up in the priority a little bit. But that's why I like talking to people like you guys, because I hear more things like this, and it really helps us adjust our priorities.
So if anybody hasn't tried it, you should download it and play with it. I don't know, I'm very particular about the feel of an editor. I mean, there's a lot of editors that I just can't stand, and this immediately felt really comfortable. I mean, it's incredibly limiting at this point, but it felt like a really comfortable editor to use, and so that was my first impression, and so but just definitely try it, give it a shot, and check it out.
I'm sorry.
Yes, and please, any questions or comments, please feel free to email me. I'm not sure if, Scott, if you've given my email to
Sure,
the group,
yeah,
or...
I'll send it out.
Is it Windows only?
It's Windows Mac.
Windows Mac.
It's an AIR application,
Okay.
so it actually will work on Linux too, but you have to stop at AIR 2.6 because as of AIR 2.7, Adobe has bailed on maintaining Linux in the AIR world. So, yeah. Yeah, well.
He's a Linux guy.
So there's no more questions. Guess we'll say thank you for joining us. We appreciate everything you've shown, and hopefully we've been helpful for your process and planning.
Yes, and thank you very much. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you guys and hearing your comments. And please, yes, send me more comments. And if you think of other scenarios or you think of other features that you would like to see in Codex, or you think, if Codex just had this, then that it might be applicable to my situation, then definitely let me know.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.